Doing tonight. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to this evening's performance, which is part of the 11th annual Gotham Storytelling Festival, which is entirely here at St.Marks. Folks, if you could just silence or mute or put, well, not even vibrate, just turn those phones good and off, make sure they're not making any noise. In the unlikely event of an emergency, the exit is just through the way you came back. And folks, without any further ado, please enjoy David Who's The OutCast.
When I walk by a restaurant or a bar in the city and I see a reflection of myself, I start to feel really insecure by the way I look. When I walk on to that restaurant and I see everyone laughing and giggling among their friends and families, enjoying their food and drinks, I feel like an outcast. I started to feel this way when Mom and Dad and my sister Debbie, when she was 1 month old, immigrated to New York City from Hong Kong in 1970 for a better life. With only $500 in their pockets, they found an amazing apartment on Valentine's Avenue in the Bronx. Little did they know, Valentine's Avenue was also known as the heroin district. During that time, New York City was just plagued with crime, drugs, and violence. And in 1976, I came into the picture. First generation American, raised by Chinese immigrants. My parents were so happy I was a product of this nation. And all they wanted was me to be like everyone else, an American. They named me David. It was only 2 syllables and 2 vowels. They never taught me Chinese. Ironically, they always spoke Chinese among themselves. And growing up, I felt like I was raised by 2 spies. When I was 7 years old, during the early 80s, I remember the lobby of our building was like a fucking zoo, just chock full of shit and puke. It made me nauseous every day. I just felt like throwing up. As soon as we walked into that apartment, and Mom and Dad locked the doors, growing up, I felt sheltered and alone because there were no kids my age to hang out with. And we were literally the only Chinese family in a predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhood. And I felt isolated and alone, and I spent a lot of my free time staring outside the window from our 2nd floor apartment and just watching all the older kids hanging out by the stoop. Just looking mad dope with their dark blue Wrangler jeans, members-only jackets, and high-top ponies. Smoking blunts and drinking 40s. Dude, I wanted to be just like them, the Jackson 5. And I begged Mom and Dad to let me hang out with them, but they told me, stay home, watch TV, don't make trouble. And that's what I did. I watched a lot of TV. And one of my favorite TV shows growing up was High Feather. It was a TV series about a bunch of kids that go to summer camp. And what I loved about that show was watching all those kids swimming in a lake and singing songs over a campfire. I wanted to be just like them. And one day, I walked up to Mom. And I asked her to take me camping. And what she does is, she pulls out this bed sheet from the dresser drawer. And she pitches this huge tent in our living room. We ordered Chinese takeout and watched Silver Spoons. Another favorite TV show of mine, about a rich white kid that lives in a big-ass mansion with tons of toys surrounded by friends. Another day, I walked up to Dad and asked him to take me fishing. And we walk into the bathroom. He fills up the bathtub with water. And he takes a can of sardines and dumps it in there. And what I do is I take my plastic toy soldiers and chuck them into the tub, like I'm reenacting a scene from the movie Jaws. Dun 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 dun. I remember one night, I was sitting in the kitchen with my mom, and I said, "Mom, I had a dream." She was like, "David, what's that?" I was a rich white kid that lived in a big-ass mansion with tons of toys, surrounded by friends. And she smiled. And then suddenly, I hear someone approach the front door of our apartment, and the sound of the key go into the lock. And then silence. My mom walks up to the door, confused. She looks through the people. And it's my dad. And she's wondering how he can't open the door. Then I hear someone else approaching the door. My mom is like, "What's wrong? Who else is out there? Is everything okay?" Followed by a blood-curdling scream. "Give me your money! I'll cut the throat of your fucking cheek!" And all I hear is the sound of fists and squeaking, echoing throughout the halls of the building. I felt I was listening to an episode of Starsky and Hutch. Then silence, and I hear that key turn in the lock. And my dad rushes into the apartment and slams the door shut. He's white as a ghost. He's shaking like a leaf. And I see his fist is in his hand. And I can see the blood dripping throughout the knuckles of his fingers onto the kitchen floor. It's bright. It's red. It's glossy. And I stand there. And I stare at it. It's a lot to process for a 7-year-old, especially after his bedtime. And I hear my mom scream, "David! Go back to sleep! Nobody trouble!" And I see my mom wrapping up my dad's hand up with a kitchen towel like a boxer. After that incident, my grandfather gave my parents his entire life savings to buy a house. And we moved to a predominantly white neighborhood called Pelham Parkway in the Bronx, with a backyard surrounded by trees. Myself and Debbie each had our own room. And I felt I was living the picture-perfect dream. So one morning, when I was 12 years old, walking to school, and I hear someone scream, "You fucking chink! Go back to China and eat a bowl of rice!" Startled and confused, because I don't even like rice. And I look around, and I see this middle-aged white guy standing on his porch across the street, staring me down and giving me the middle finger. I don't know what the fuck this guy's problem is, but I'm late for school. The next morning, on my way to school, I see that fucking asshole standing on his porch, staring at me like a hawk. And what I do is I keep my head down, continue to walk. As I walk by his house, all I hear is, "You fucking chink! Go back to China and eat a bowl of rice!" My body is numb. I felt like I got hit with a softball. And every morning, for over a week, I feel like a moving target for this fucking asshole's racist gratification. And I just can't take it anymore. And I tell Mom and Dad, they're livid. And they confront that guy one afternoon. And I remember they got back home, and they were like, "Okay, we don't bother you anymore. We tell him off." Woo! I literally felt like this weight lifted off my shoulders. And I was finally able to walk to school in peace that morning. Later that afternoon, when I got back home, my mom was standing at the front of the door. And she's like, "David, I gotta tell you something." Based on the tone, it did not sound good. I said, "Mom, what's going on?" "David, someone threw a rock through our window and almost hit Dad when he was sleeping." My mouth was dry, felt this bottomless pit in my stomach. I could not believe what I was hearing. Mom, did you call the police? No, we don't call police. No witnesses. Dad, what are we going to do about it? We're going to beat the shit out of this guy? No, leave it alone, no trouble. Pissed off, confused, and obviously scared how my parents were handling this situation. Because growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood like Pelham Parkway in the Bronx, everyone solves their problems by beating the shit out of each other. I remember one afternoon, one of my neighbors was marching down the street with a shovel full of dog shit. Yes. Not grass-fed. And he goes up to one of the houses and catapults the dog shit all over his driveway, staircase, and porch. And I hear him scream, "You motherfucker! Cover your dog next time, I'll take the shovel and shove it up your ass!" And I was like, whoa, that guy knows how to handle his shit. I wish Mom and Dad did the same. After that incident, things got bad, like spread like cancer. People out throughout the neighborhood would call me a fucking chink, tell me to go back to China and eat a bowl of rice. Where else am I supposed to go? I was born in this country. One afternoon, I was standing on the corner of the street, and there was a bus full of white boys just drive by me, and all huddle up against the window with fists clenched. "You fucking chink! I'm gonna kill you and your family, and I'm gonna break your window." As soon as that bus drove away, I started crying. I fucking hated living in that neighborhood. And I begged Mom and Dad for us to move. But they were like, no. Grandpa bought this house. Grandpa wants us to stay. And their only suggestion was walk the other way, the longer way to school. One afternoon, on my way to school, I see my neighbor Jerry across the street. This crazy ex-Vietnam vet. "Hey kid, come here, I got something for you." I walk across the street, and I go into his house, and he hands me a hammer. And he says, "Next time you see that motherfucker, I want you to beat the shit out of him until he dies." I'm like, cool, thanks. I was hoping for candy, but I settled for the hammer. The next morning, I found out there was a water main break on the other way to school. And my only alternative is to walk by that fucking crazy asshole's house. And I'm scared as shit because I think this guy's going to kill me. I have no choice. I have a history exam later that morning. And what I do is I take that hammer and put it in my book bag. On my way to school, it's filled with anxiety. And as I pass by his house, I don't see him standing on the porch. I see him walking down the street. And I follow him. What I do is, as I get closer, I take that hammer out of my book bag. As I clock my arm, he suddenly falls to the ground face first. And I was like, wow, that was easy. And I'm standing over him, he's convulsing like a fish out of water. And I hear him say, "My pills, please, my pills, please." As I continue to stare at him, I suddenly see a reflection of my dad. That night he got stabbed, white as a ghost, shaking like a leaf, his fist in his hand, with the blood dripping throughout the knuckles of his fingers onto the kitchen floor, bright red and glossy. And I knew I had to help this guy out. And I bang on the neighbor's door. "Hey man, just fucking call an ambulance, this guy's about to die." They roll up and pick him up. 1 week later, on my way to school, I see that guy sitting on his porch. He looks really weak. He's wearing a robe and he has a cane in his hand. And I walk across the street and I'm like, "Hey man, are you okay?" And I see him struggling out of his chair. I'm hoping he's going to thank me for saving his life. And maybe we can be friends. And he said, "You fucking chink, go back to China and eat a bowl of rice." I guess we're not going to be friends. Eventually he died. And the Cambodian family moved in. My problems were not just in the neighborhood I lived in. It was also the schools I attended. When I was 7 years old, Mom and Dad sent me to Catholic school, because my older sister Debbie went there. I remember sitting down in class. I got my navy blue slacks, my light blue button-down shirt, and my clip-on tie. And the teacher walks in, this white woman wearing this long white hat. And she addresses the class as Sister Louis Agnes Marie. And she asked each one of us to come up to the front and write our name on the blackboard. As I watched each student walk up to the front, they pick up that chalk with their right hand. When it's my turn to come up to the front, I pick up that chalk with my left hand. And as I attempted to write my name on the blackboard, my left hand just keeps erasing what I wrote. I have to write my name over and over again. And all the kids in class are chanting, wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. A reference to the movie The Karate Kid. And Sister Louis Agnes Marie just shook her head in shame. She was not much a fan of the movie. But she says, I have a suggestion. Why don't you use your good hand to write your name on the blackboard? Just my right hand. And I always thought I was using my good hand, but I gave it a try. And I just couldn't have a firm grip on the chalk. And it kept on dropping out of my hand, and I had to keep it kneeling down and picking it up. And all the kids are just laughing and giggling at me. And Sister Louis Agnes Marie just shook her head in frustration. She said, just sit back down. We'll eventually figure out your name. It was embarrassing, and I hoped things would get better, but every day, she would always complain to my mom and dad that I'm always doodling my notebook or staring outside the window and daydreaming. My parents' concerns just grew with frustration. And I remember one afternoon, I was standing in my room, and my dad walks in. He picks up my box of toys and slams it on the ground. And I see all my plastic soldiers scattered all around me. And he says, stay home, do nothing, don't go to school, just play toys. Tough love. And my mom walks in, she says, David, you're not Chinese, you just look American like everyone else. Lazy and useless. He apologized later that evening, and he told me they are optimistic things will get better, but that still lingers with me today in the back of my mind. One afternoon, I had to use the bathroom really bad. And I walked up to Sister Louis Agnes Marie. I was like, Sister, I have to use the bathroom really bad. She said, David, what? I said, Sister, I have to use the bathroom really bad. Sit back down. Just be quiet. Don't bother me. The minute I sat back down, I pissed my pants. And everyone in the class was laughing and giggling as I sat there in my piss-soaked pants. And honestly, I wasn't embarrassed. I was actually relieved because I fucking hated those navy blue slacks. And she called my dad. And my dad shows up. The first thing he does is picks me up by my armpits, holds me as tight as he can, and he says, okay, don't worry, we're going home, okay? And he kind of chuckles, and I just buried my face in my dad's shoulder. It felt like I was in a safe space. And I hear Sister Louis Agnes Marie scream at my dad, you see what your son did? You see the mess he made? Is this how your culture raises kids to be animals like him? And in my dad's broken English, he's only 7-year-old. How come you don't want to use the bathroom? Why? After that day, I never went back to Catholic school. I started going to public school. And the teachers put me in a classroom for kids with special needs. It's called the resource room. Just like a regular classroom, but smaller. It was myself and 2 other kids. And what I loved about resource room was the teachers really cared about me. They even suggested I use my good hand to doodle on my notebook. Well, when I told them I was comfortable just using my existing hand, he was supportive. And throughout the years, I loved the resource room. But ironically, I felt sheltered and alone, like that 7-year-old kid living on that second-floor apartment on Valentine's Avenue in the Bronx, staring outside the window and seeing all those older kids hanging out by the stoop, looking mad dope with their dark blue Wrangler jeans and members only jackets. But this time, I'm staring outside the window of the door and seeing all the kids walk by in the hall. And I always wondered how it would be like, just be like the regular kids in the school. And when I was 14 years old, in the early 90s, I finally got that opportunity when I entered high school. And honestly, it wasn't a walk in the park. I struggled to fit in. It was predominantly black and Hispanic, and I was literally the only Chinese kid in the entire school. Kids made fun of me, not just because of the color of my skin, but the clothes I wore. Crew neck sweaters, beige corduroy pants from the Gap. Because my sister worked there for many years. During the early 90s, hip-hop music had a really strong influence on kids' fashion as well as attitude. It was baggy, it was kind of like disheveled. Everyone just looked like a pimped-out janitor. And every day after school, I just felt like shit. I remember I sat down with Debbie, and I told her, hey, where can I find cool clothes other than the Gap? Because that family discount is not doing me any justice. So one afternoon, we went to the East Village, and it truly opened my eyes to a whole new culture. Regardless of what color your skin is, what clothes you have on, you are accepted for who you are, an individual. And she brought me to this place called the Unique Warehouse. It was like Disney World for hipsters. The place was covered with graffiti. They're playing house music, and it smells like bohemian body oil and burnt pretzels. And I see this kid walking around, and he looks mad dope, wearing his polo sweatshirt, these baggy jeans, and Jordan 1s. And I was like, wow, I want to be just like him. The next day at school, I walked around the halls with my new outfit from the Unique Warehouse. This oversized white t-shirt that said Phillies blunts across it, these light blue baggy-ass jeans, my white on white Air Force One knockoffs from Chinatown, looking like a homeless astronaut. And this kid walks up to me, and his eyes light up from Christmas tree, and he's like, hey yo, that shit is mad ill, where'd you get that? And I was like, the Unique Warehouse. And he's like, word, and he walks away, and I felt good about myself that day. Every free moment I had, I spent it in the Unique Warehouse, just buying clothes, because it made me feel more secure about the way I felt about myself. And every time I went there, I would always see that kid walking around, just looking mad dope, wearing Nautica now. And I really want to talk to him. I just want to sound intelligent. And I take a deep breath, and I walk up to him, and I'm like, hey yo, that shit is mad ill, where'd you get that? And he gives me a dirty look. And he's like, I stole it, you got a fucking problem? I'm like, word. And we became friends. His name is Adobe, and he introduces me to his friends. And I feel really good to be part of the circle in a neighborhood I don't even live in. And one day we're all hanging around Washington Square Park, and Adobe rolls me up a joint. And he said, yo, smoke this shit. And I was like, yo, I got this. But honestly, I don't. I never smoked a cigarette nor a joint in my entire life, so I'm assuming you gotta blow into it. It's really wet and soggy, it's disgusting. You're all laughing at me. And they said, you know what you gotta do? You gotta inhale, keep it in, and exhale. And after a couple tries, I was feeling good. And they invited me to go clubbing with them that night. The only problem is I was 14 years old, and I don't know what to do. And Adobe reaches deep inside his pocket, and he pulls out a fake ID. And it says, Adobe, 25, NYU. And that afternoon, I paid $5 for my first fake ID at a smoke shop. I'm standing in front of a rack full of porno magazines. My head looks like a dirty Q-tip. And I have this huge earring in my ear that looks like a shower ring for a curtain. And it says, Dave, 25, Harvard Business School. Because all the NYU fake IDs are sold out. Later that night, I'm getting ready to go clubbing. And my mom, dad, and sister walks into my room. They said, David, we need to talk to you. I'm like, what? You find out you're not going to school anymore. You're hanging out in a neighborhood you don't even live in, with people you don't even know that well. Adobe, what kind of name is that? Dave, we don't want you to go clubbing tonight. God forbid, they end up robbing you, beating you up. What are you going to do? And I was like, that's bullshit, Mom and Dad. I don't care what you have to say. They were like, okay, you're grounded. You're never going out. And my sister says, David, after tonight, I don't have a brother anymore. And if you're looking for clothing, you're going to have to pay full price like the rest of the chumps in this neighborhood. I was pissed off. And what I did was I waited for everyone to go to sleep. And I take my sister's huge stuffed teddy bear with one eye missing. And I put it under the comforters of the bed. Make it look like I was sleeping. And I snuck out. And when I arrived at the club, it was complete culture shock. Seeing people just doing drugs as well as in the bathroom. It was unsettling and disturbing. I felt like it was an ABC after-school special. And I told Adobe and his friends, let's bounce, go get a slice, not feeling this. As soon as we walked out the club, I got jumped. I remember laying on the floor in the fetal position, the punching and kicking me. And I feel my body's numb, pins and needles are just rushing through my veins. I'm trying to scream, but there's no sound coming out of my mouth. I feel like I'm in a bad dream, like I'm drowning and trying to get above water. But the reality is, I'm going to die. And then I hear a cop car drive by. And they all take off running with $50 in my pocket. And I take off running the other way. For the train. I'm sitting in an empty train car. And I'm just staring at my reflection in the window. And I just feel so insecure by the way I look. My clothes are ripped, I'm covered in dirt, I'm bruised, bloody. And I just feel stupid. I can't believe I got betrayed by people I trusted. When I got back home that night, I walk into my room, turn on my lights, and I see that stuffed teddy bear with one eye missing sitting on my bed. It was like something out of an Edgar Allan Poe novel. I was freaked out. And behind me, it's my mom and dad, stone-faced. And they just go straight to their room. The next morning, sitting at the breakfast table, my mom makes me a cup of tea and sets aside a box of bandages. My parents always had my back. I was just too stupid to understand. And ironically, getting my ass kicked did not stop me from hanging out in the East Village. And Mom, being Mom, suggested I take a class at NYU, a safer way to meet new people. And I took her suggestion and I walked into the NYU bookstore one afternoon, formerly the Unique Warehouse. And I picked up a brochure and I signed up for life drawing because as a kid, I loved to doodle in my notebook. Now I can take those childhood useless skills and learn how to draw baskets of fruits like apples and oranges. I I remember my first day of class. I was so excited with my overpriced sketch pad and my charcoal pencils from Pearl Paint on Canal Street in Chinatown. Yeah. When I walked in, I was in complete shock. The room was empty. And all I see is this wooden bar stool in the center of the room. This bright fluorescent light beaming down on it. I felt like I was in a horror movie. Then a bunch of kids walk in, and they all look really cool with NYU t-shirts and carrying their overpriced sketch pads and charcoal pencils from Pearl Paint on Canal Street, Chinatown. And I felt like I blended in. Then the teacher walks in. It's a middle-aged white woman. Jet black hair, tied into the ponytail. She looks a bit frazzled and off, and she's apologizing profusely. I am so sorry I am late. There was an issue on a train. The model is on her way. Please be patient. I am so sorry. Confused and annoyed, I was like, wait a minute, model? What are we talking about? I thought we were going to spend the entire class learning how to draw a basket of fruits like apples and oranges. I thought this was called life drawing. She looks at me with this angry look on her face. Excuse me? Basket of fruits? Apples and oranges? Oh boy, you are in for a surprise. And everyone just bursted out in laughter. I did not know what I did to offend her. And then the model walks in. She's beautiful. In her early 20s, milky white skin and curly brown hair. And she's wearing a royal blue summer dress with sea monkeys on it. And I see her walk to the center of the room. And I see that bright fluorescent light beaming down on her like an angel from the sky. And she lifts up her royal blue summer dress over her head. And I see it just fall to the ground like a feather from the sky. As she is completely butt-ass naked. She sits down on a wooden bar stool. She's facing me, we both lock eyes. And then she spreads her legs wide open. And I just stared right at it. I never expected it to look like that. 15-year-old, shy and naive me never expected it to look like an overripe, half-unpitted peach. And then I feel a hand on my shoulder and a whisper in my ear. And the teacher says, David, you should not just focus on her inner beauty, but her outer beauty as well. And everyone's giggling as they're sketching in their pads. And I look up and the model is staring right at me in shock. And what I do is I just put my head down and I start doodling with my sketch pad. Towards the end of class, the teacher asked each one of us to come up to the front and share our drawing with everyone. And she says, David, why don't you start it off for us first? We are all really excited to find out what baskets of fruits you drew for us today. And everyone just burst out in laughter. As I walk up to the center of the room, I prop up that sketch pad on that wooden bar stool. It's this big, black, smudgy dot that encompasses the whole canvas of the pad. And everyone in the room has this blank look on their face, just like everyone tonight. And I take a deep breath, and I'm like, this is my interpretation of staring down the Grand Canyon. And everyone has this confused and disgusted look on his face. Ironically, the teacher had this look of curiosity. She's like, David, brilliant. And everyone applauds and cheers. And I'm surprised and flattered. Because my drawing did not connect with everyone, but just being myself and owning up to being this shy, naive 15-year-old kid did. And I ended up staying with the class. And what I learned is, just like art, our perception of others and new things are subjective, just like a basket of fruit. And we learn more about each other after each stroke. After taking that class, it truly inspired me to go away to college. I ended up going to a small school in upstate New York called Oswego. My first week there, completely homesick, hating life, because I live in a dorm full of douchey white frat guys that drink beer and listen to Green Day. What a bunch of American idiots. I remember one Thursday night while everyone's out and about, I'm laying in my bed, and I hear a knock on my door, and it's Aaron, my residence assistant, someone I befriended and looked up to. And he says, "Hey Dave, well, why are you sleeping?" And I tell him, I'm really homesick, and I think I want to move back. And he tells me, "Dude, it's only your first week, give it some time. I have a party in my room, and you're invited." He brings me into his room, and there's a bunch of douchey white frat guys drinking beer and listening to Green Day. Fuck me. And he hands me a Labatt's Blue Ribbon. I never drank beer before, but I tasted like, metal and seltzer water. I said, "Dude, where'd you get this from? Flint, Michigan?" And he said, "Dude, just drink it, it's good for you." After a couple bottles, I was feeling good. I said, "Hey man, you ever smoke weed?" I said, "Sure have." And I just remembered this time to inhale, and hold it to exhale. And later that night, we went out on the town. The first place we stopped by was a 7-Eleven. How classy we were. And I picked up a microwave burrito. I never had Mexican food before, especially at 7-Eleven. And we get to the bar, and that's when I started feeling this sharp pain in my stomach. And I told myself, I don't want to take a shit in my pants because it's not a politically correct thing to do when you're a freshman in college. So what I do is I go out to the back of the bar, some like shithole bar for underage drinkers, and I squat down, and I pull down my pants, and my ass exploded. And I had my hands over my face, and I shake my head like the Great Depression 1920, just telling myself, when is this shit going to end? Then I feel this bright light in my face. And I think it's the cops or the owner are going to get shot. And I flail my arms and no! And I fall flat in my own excrements. And that bright light is still in my face, and I realize I took a shit under a motion sensor. I truly learned drinking and microwave burritos was not for me. And I transferred to a school closer to home, Stony Brook. And I befriended a group of kids that were really smart and ambitious. And they motivated me and got me through 4 years of college. And after I graduated college, I got a job at a major publishing company in Midtown Manhattan. I knew since day one I was going to start and end my career there. And I was right. After 6 months, I got fired. I'm being fucking incompetent. Devastated. Because all my close friends in college abandoned me because I wasn't worth their time. Future employees did not give me a chance because I got fired from my first job. I got really depressed, slept all day, and watched TV. One afternoon, a Cialis commercial came on, and I started to cry. Seeing this middle-aged white guy running down the beach with his button-down dress shirt and wrinkle-free khakis. Because he was better than me, and my parents knew I had a problem. They sat down with me, and they were like, "David, you gotta understand it was not your fault you got fired. You gotta move on. You can't just sit around and cry during Cialis commercials. What's up with that? You gotta find a job, I don't care what you do." And I ended up finding a job on a construction site, working in a hot and stuffy storage room, unpacking boxes of computers. I felt like I was in John Wayne Gacy's basement. It was humbling, making minimum wage with a college degree, and quite degrading when your manager is John. Stocky, tough guy from Long Island, always wore short sleeve polo shirts, and he had this tattoo on his forearm of Donald Duck holding a severed head. It was quite childish and disturbing. And he always walked around with a wooden baseball bat like a warden in a prison, and cursed like a sailor. Every morning I walked onto that site, just kept my head down, just did my work. One morning, someone broke into the storage room, stole all the computers, and standing behind me was John. He was fucking pissed. What the fuck just happened? You don't lock the room when you leave? What, you fucking stupid? I was so embarrassed I stormed out. I never returned back. When I got back home, my mom was standing at the door. She said, David, why did you walk off? How do you know? Sean called, and he's worried about you. Why would you do that to a guy like John? He sounds like such a sweetheart. I said, Mom, please don't make assumptions until you meet a man like John. She said, Dave, you got to return back. You need a job. So the next morning, I swallowed my pride, and everyone at that construction site was egging me on, reliving my worst memory from high school. Ooh, John is pissed. He's going to fuck you up. You better be prepared to be a paraplegic in heaven. All right, just some context. It's bad enough when I end up like a paraplegic, but in heaven, come on now. And I'm in his office, and he's circling around me with that baseball bat. I just started crying because I thought he was going to beat the shit out of me. And he whispers in my ear and says, David, I don't mind if you have to go home. Gotta let me know. Now get back to fucking work! Some sadistic reason I had newfound respect for John. Until he started cursing me out again. And I stood up. I said, John, I have a college degree in computers. I'm not here to unpack boxes of computers. I'm here to fix them. And John had this somber look on his face. He was sober that day. And he says, Dave, how come you never told me how you felt? You truly hurt my feelings. I'm like, am I getting gaslit here? I said, Dave, I've been having problems with my computer. I want you to take a look at it, please. He walked up to his office and he said, there's something wrong with my monitor. And he takes his baseball bat and cracks his monitor with it. And he points that baseball bat at me and says, yo, you're lucky it's not your fucking head, bitch. Now shut the fuck up and fix my monitor. And I had to go back to the storage room and pick up one of those monitors that weighed like a ton. And every morning he would break his monitor. And it got to the point I got so fed up because my back was hurting me that the next time I broke his monitor, I plugged it in. And he smiled. And he got me doing spreadsheets. And after 1 year of working closely with John, he fired me. And he says, Dave, it's not because you're fucking competent. You're better than this job. And I was sad because I truly became close to John. So what I did was I went out to the Sports Authority, picked up a wooden baseball bat with his initials engraved on it. And I walked up to his office, I pointed at him and said, you're lucky it's not your fucking head, bitch. He smiled and we hugged. Shortly afterwards, I got a second chance at a career. This time on Wall Street, working on the trading floor, fixing computers. And every morning, I walk onto the floor, I feel like I'm entering the emergency room. A trading floor. It's like one big office space. Everyone is sitting elbow to elbow with each other on these long wooden tables, looking at these big computer screens with flashing numbers. Everyone is screaming and yelling when they're making and losing money. And I'm on the forefront, making sure everyone's computers is working. Because all my coworkers are condescending, lazy, and they spend more time talking shit about people than actually doing work. The only person that truly cares about me is my manager, Scott. And it's intense, it's scary and stressful, but the money's really good. And over the years, I do really well. And I start having really bad health issues. Sharp pains in my chest, coughing all the time. And I have this small lump on the right side of my neck. I don't care. I mean, because everyone else looks like shit on the trading floor. You know, coughing everywhere and vomiting in their wastebaskets due to the stress. Because when you're working on the trading floor, your health is not your priority. It's all about making money. And that's what I learned from Pat. Pat was one of the traders I worked closely with. Really intense looking guy. He was always beat red like he strangled someone the night before. And would march on to that trading floor with a box of diapers, Hubs. And he would always plop that box on his table and sit at his desk and stare at his flashing numbers for 13 hours straight. And I always wondered, Pat's not married. He doesn't have kids. found out he was wearing the diapers. Because he refused to take bathroom breaks. Because his thing was bathroom breaks for fucking pussies. Oh my God, it's right. And one morning, I found out that Pat passed out in his bathroom due to massive stroke. Everyone was shocked, but we still went on with business. And one afternoon, my manager sat down with me, Scott. And he's like, Dave, you're doing really well at your job, and I want to put you up for a promotion. But the only thing that's holding you back is your communication skills. I want you to start getting out there, talking to people, and doing presentations. And honestly, I was scared. I always had this fear of public speaking, but I was able to avoid it, doing jobs like these. Fixing computers, minimal interaction, and just going to the next problem. He tells me, Dave, you can't avoid it. No matter how good you are at your job, if you can't articulate what you do, what good are you? So one afternoon, I signed up for a public speaking class. I remember my first day in class. It was packed. Everyone was sitting shoulder to shoulder with each other, mostly from the training floor. And the teacher walks in, and he says, I want each one of you to come up to the front and explain why you want to do public speaking. Let's start with you, David. Fuck me. So I walk up to the front, and everyone's eyes are on me, and I tell them, I had a fear of public speaking. And the teacher has every look on his face. He said, David, you should not ever tell anyone you have a fear of public speaking. Now myself and everyone else feels like you're weak. Everyone, don't do what David did. Did I sign up for public speaking or the U.S. Marine Corps? After that day, I felt so insecure about how I spoke to people, even my parents. And I remember I reached out to my friend Robbie Weinstein, who is an instructor at the Magnet. I said, Robbie, I need your advice. How can I improve my public speaking? And he says, well, Dave, you ever thought about taking storytelling? I said, storytelling, what's that? He said, it's an 8-week course. And everyone sits around a circle, and each person stands up in the middle of the circle and tells a short story about something that happened in their life. And each person critiques their story in the circle. I thought it was fucking retarded, like an overpriced slumber party. But I was desperate, and I took the course, and after 8 weeks, I did not just become an effective public speaker. One of the big takeaways was, hey man, it's okay to feel vulnerable around people. It's a strength, not a weakness. And I ended up getting a promotion, and shortly afterwards, I took time off from work to follow my dreams, to tell stories in different cities at the MOF, a storytelling competition. And when I got back to work, the company was going through some seriously tough times. They've been going through tough times for years. It just kind of surfaced its ugly head. And people were getting let go, and my coworkers were on edge. And he blamed me for taking time off. Tell me I left them high and dry because they actually had to do work. I'm like, isn't that what we're paid for? And my manager, Scott, took their side, and he blamed me for getting a promotion, telling me I made everyone look like an asshole. And every morning, I'm in the office, my coworkers will walk by me, talk under their breath, fuck you fucking asshole, you motherfucker. And I quickly learned my passive-aggressive coworkers love referring to me by pronouns. And after 12 years, I got let go. And I found out that bump on the right side of my neck, which is now the size of a baby's fist, was cancer. And it's spreading. And I was shocked, embarrassed, I let my folks down. I remember I sat down with my folks and told them I got let go, now I have cancer. And they were supportive, and they were angry because that job I had for years was slowly killing me. And later that month, I got a 3-inch tumor removed from my neck, as well as my entire thyroid. And I spent a few months at my parents' house recovering, reflecting on the emotional and physical toll I put myself just to be someone I'm not. And I started to reflect on what I really want to do in life, tell stories. And today, I do tell stories in the boardroom, in the classroom, at events, to senior level executives telling, hey man, It's okay to feel pissed off if you can't open that email attachment or connect to the Wi-Fi at Starbucks, because being vulnerable about technology is a strength, not a weakness. And every day I walk into the office and I stare outside that window, I see that publishing company building I got fired from straight out of college. And I stare at my reflection and I don't feel insecure anymore, I feel confident. And 6 years later, that Wall Street trading company went bankrupt due to a culture of blame and a lack of accountability. And my current company took them over. And now my former coworkers are my current ones, especially Pat. And Pat is married, and he has kids, and he's damn good at changing diapers. For my entire life, I always felt like being an outcast truly fucking sucked. Like being alone in a bar or restaurant, just watching everyone laughing and giggling along with their friends and families, enjoying their food and drinks. But what I learned as an adult is that it definitely opened opportunities for me to take risks, challenge the status quo, and make me the success I am today. Thank you.